William Money, a man once known as a feared and relentless gunfighter, now lives a life of quiet struggle on a remote hog farm with his two young children. His days of violence and gunplay ended years ago when he met his wife. She was a kind woman who saw the potential for good in him, and because of her, he renounced his past. He abandoned gunfighting, drinking, and all the other vices that had defined his earlier life. Her influence shaped the man he tried to become, but fate had other plans. In 1878, smallpox took her away, leaving William to raise their children alone in the harsh wilderness, clinging to the moral values he believes she would have wanted him to uphold. Now, it is 1880, and William's life consists of trying to survive, to provide for his children on a hog farm where he often fails as a farmer, stumbling in the mud, fighting against sick hogs, struggling to keep their small livelihood afloat. Meanwhile, in the town of Big Whiskey, Wyoming, a lawless atmosphere reigns under the iron-fisted rule of Sheriff Little Bill Daggett. His idea of justice is arbitrary, brutal when necessary, and flexible when it comes to serving his own interests. The town has its own version of law and order, and it's about to be tested. Two cowboys, Davy and Mike, roll into town looking for trouble. They find it in a brothel owned by Skinny Dubois. Inside the brothel, a woman named Delilah, scarred from life's many hardships, makes a comment that Mike interprets as an insult. What follows is swift, vicious. Mike attacks her with a knife, leaving her face horribly disfigured with deep, ugly scars. The other women at the brothel, led by Strawberry Alice, are furious. They lock the cowboys inside, keeping them there until Sheriff Little Bill arrives to dispense his version of justice. The women demand that Davy and Mike be hanged for what they've done, the brutal scarring of Delilah's face being unforgivable in their eyes. But Little Bill, ever the pragmatist, isn't interested in hanging anyone unless it's absolutely necessary. He decides that since Delilah wasn't killed, the punishment should be a horsewhipping instead of hanging. Skinny, however, has his own concerns. He's not thinking about Delilah's scars or justice, but about the money he'll lose because of her disfigurement. Who's going to pay for her services now? With this weighing on his mind, Skinny argues for a different kind of compensation. Little Bill, seeing an easy out, agrees. The cowboys won't be whipped, they'll simply give Skinny some horses to make up for the damage done. The decision enrages the women, especially Strawberry Alice. In their eyes, no amount of horses can erase the violence inflicted on Delilah. They want blood. In the shadows, they conspire. Pooling together whatever money they have, the women offer a reward for the death of the two cowboys. Word of the bounty spreads. Meanwhile, back at his farm, William Money continues his life of toil and failure. His hogs are sick, and he's having a miserable time trying to manage them. The man who once held a gun steady in the face of death now can't even keep his balance in the mud. As he wrestles with his failures, a young man rides up to the farm, introducing himself as the Schofield Kid. The kid knows who William is, or at least who he was. He's heard the stories of the infamous gunfighter William Money and sees him as a way to claim the reward the women in Big Whiskey are offering. The kid proposes a deal. They'll track down the cowboys together, kill them, and split the reward. At first, William refuses. He hasn't killed a man since he met his late wife, and he has no intention of going back to that life. But after the kid leaves, something stirs within William. That old instinct, buried deep for years, slowly resurfaces. He remembers the feel of the gun, the sense of power that came with it. As if testing fate, William sets a tin can on a tree stump and tries to shoot it. He misses, again and again, each shot a reminder of how far he's fallen from his former self. Frustrated, he goes back inside and returns with his shotgun. The next shot blows the can off the stump in one loud explosion. The past is calling. In Big Whiskey, Davy and Mike arrive to deliver the horses they owe as part of their punishment. The women greet them with cold fury, throwing rocks and manure at the two cowboys. Mike remains unapologetic, seemingly indifferent to the suffering he's caused. But Davy, visibly shaken, seems genuinely remorseful. He offers one of the horses to Delilah as a gesture of apology, but the women respond with more hostility, throwing even more manure. They don't want apologies, they want justice. William knows he can't do this alone, so he seeks out his old partner, Ned Logan. Together, they'll ride into Big Whiskey and settle the score. Before leaving, William says goodbye to his children, instructing them to contact Sally Two Trees, Ned's common-law wife, if they ever need help while he's gone. Mounting his horse proves to be as difficult as everything else these days. William struggles, falling off multiple times before finally managing to ride off toward Ned's place. When he arrives, Sally glares at him, a silent accusation hanging in the air. She knows what this visit means, and she knows it won't end well. Her silent disdain is palpable. With Ned at his side, the two set off in search of the kid, eventually finding him and discovering a painful truth. The kid is severely nearsighted. He can't see anything more than 50 yards away, making him almost useless with a gun. The idea of killing men becomes more complicated. In the meantime, another player enters the game, a gray-haired Englishman known as English Bob. He arrives in Big Whiskey with a biographer named Beauchamp, traveling by train, pontificating to the passengers about the superiority of monarchy over democracy, and even bringing up the recent assassination of President Garfield. English Bob has his own legends, carefully curated and exaggerated over the years, but Little Bill sees through the facade. When Bob arrives in town, Little Bill confronts him, catching him trying to hide his gun. The sheriff is brutal, beating Bob mercilessly, kicking and punching him until he's almost unconscious. Then, as if the beating wasn't enough, Little Bill throws Bob and his biographer into jail. Inside the cell, Little Bill takes pleasure in tearing down the myths surrounding English Bob, exposing the lies and embellishments in his stories. Beauchamp, impressed by Little Bill's ruthlessness and authority, shifts his loyalty, deciding to become Little Bill's biographer instead of Bob's. After a humiliating stay in jail, English Bob is sent out of town on a train, his reputation in tatters. As William, Ned, and the kid approach Big Whiskey, they see the train carrying English Bob away, a grim reminder of what happens to those who challenge Little Bill's authority. By the time they reach the town, a heavy rainstorm has started, and William is suffering from a fever, his body weak and shaking, his mind clouded by illness. But the mission is far from over. Ned and the kid move upstairs, eager to indulge in the pleasures offered by the prostitutes, while William Money remains downstairs. His past life, the one filled with sinful indulgences, no longer tempts him. He's left those days behind, though the ghosts of that past continue to haunt him. His presence in Big Whiskey hasn't gone unnoticed, and neither has the bounty on Davy and Mike. Little Bill, suspicious of Money and assuming he's another man after the reward, treats him with contempt. Without hesitation, Little Bill brutalizes Money, beating him down, much like he did with English Bob. Every punch, every kick drives home Little Bill's message. This is his town, and anyone who dares challenge his authority will face the same fate. After the savage beating, Money is thrown out into the street, battered and bleeding. Little Bill's deputies are dispatched to find Ned and the kid, but the two manage a daring escape through a window. They rescue Money, hoisting him onto his horse, and flee the town, riding hard under the cover of night. The rain pours down, masking their retreat as they disappear into the wilderness. They don't stop until they're a safe distance from Big Whiskey, where they find refuge with some of the prostitutes. As Money lies recovering from his injuries, the rain gives way to snow. Time passes slowly as the snow blankets the ground, and with it, a stillness falls over the land. Money heals and the snow eventually melts, signaling that their time is coming. Ned and the kid have been scouting their targets, waiting for the right moment to strike. The quiet before the storm lingers. Then, the moment arrives. Davy is out with a group of cowboys, chasing a calf through the open fields. Suddenly, a gunshot rings out. It's Ned who fired, and the bullet strikes Davy's horse, sending the animal crashing to the ground. The horse's weight pins Davy beneath it, and his leg is crushed. The man writhes in pain, trapped, helpless. Ned, standing over him, has the perfect shot, but something inside him hesitates. Killing doesn't come as easily as it once did. Meanwhile, the kid, despite his bravado, can't make the shot either. His vision is too poor to take aim from such a distance. The responsibility falls to Money. With the cold precision of a man who's done this before, he steps in. Several shots ring out, echoing across the fields, until finally, Davy falls silent, the last bullet from Money's gun sealing his fate. As Davy lies dying, the reality of death sets in. He begs for water, his voice weak and trembling. Money, despite being the one who shot him, calls out to the other cowboys nearby, telling them to give Davy a drink. He promises not to shoot, and the cowboys, desperate to ease their comrades' suffering, comply. True to his word, Money watches as they give Davy his final drink, keeping his gun lowered. It's a small mercy in a world where mercy is hard to come by. The bloodshed weighs heavily on Ned. He's had enough. Killing isn't something he wants to be part of anymore. He makes the decision to leave, to return home to his life, far away from the violence. But fate intervenes. As Ned tries to leave, he's captured by Little Bill's men. What follows is brutal. Ned is interrogated, tortured by Little Bill, who is determined to break him. Back in the shadows, Money and the kid wait, knowing that Mike is under guard. They bide their time, watching, waiting for their chance. When Mike finally steps outside to use the outhouse, it's the kid who takes the shot. He waits until Mike finishes, then squeezes the trigger. The bullet finds its mark, and Mike crumples to the ground. But the kid, who had boasted so much about being a killer, is overwhelmed by the reality of what he's done. Killing isn't the glorious act he imagined, it's messy, terrifying, and soul-crushing. He can't handle it. Shaken to his core, the kid turns to Money, confessing, "I'm not like you." He can't continue. The weight of taking a life is too much. Money, ever the hardened man, tries to comfort the kid with a bottle of whiskey, but it doesn't help. The kid is broken, and nothing can fix him. The reward money arrives, delivered by one of the prostitutes. She informs Money of a chilling piece of news. Ned has been killed. Little Bill, in his relentless cruelty, displayed Ned's body in public, a gruesome spectacle meant to send a message. With this revelation, Money's identity is exposed. There's no more hiding, no more running. With the kid too shaken to continue, Money sends him away. He tells the kid to take his share of the reward money, leave Ned's and Nan's portions with his children, and use what's left to buy himself a good pair of spectacles. The kid rides off, leaving Money alone with his thoughts and a bottle of whiskey. As the sun begins to set, Money mounts his horse and rides toward Big Whiskey. The cold bite of the whiskey burns down his throat, but it does nothing to dull the fire of revenge burning inside him. In the streets of Big Whiskey, Ned's body is displayed in an open casket, propped up like some morbid trophy. A sign hangs from his neck, labeling him as a cold-blooded assassin. The sight of his friend's lifeless body fills Money with rage, but his face remains impassive. He's been here before. Inside the saloon, the townspeople have gathered, unaware of the storm about to befall them. Money strides in, his steps heavy, his eyes dark with purpose. He scans the room, looking for the one responsible for Ned's death. When Skinny, the saloon's owner, steps forward, Money makes no hesitation. He orders the men standing nearby to move aside, and when they do, he raises his gun and shoots Skinny without a second thought. The gunshot echoes in the room, leaving a deafening silence in its wake. Little Bill, ever the tyrant, calls Money a coward for shooting an unarmed man. But Money's cold reply cuts through the tension. He should have armed himself if he's gonna decorate his saloon with my friend. The air is thick with fear. Money isn't done. He turns his attention to Little Bill, the man who had caused so much suffering. He orders the men standing near him to step back. They do, sensing the danger in Money's voice. But when Money pulls the trigger on his shotgun, it misfires. The silence is broken by a collective gasp. Little Bill sneers, thinking he's won, but Money is far from finished. He throws the useless shotgun at Little Bill, drawing his pistol in one fluid motion. In the blink of an eye, he fires, hitting Little Bill. The sheriff stumbles, but Money doesn't stop. He takes down several other men who dared to draw their guns. The saloon erupts into chaos. Bullets fly, bodies fall, but none of the shots fired at Money seem to hit him. He moves like a man possessed, every shot finding its mark. Soon, the saloon is littered with bodies. The survivors, those who can still move, flee in terror. As the dust settles, Money stands alone amidst the carnage. He turns to the bar, pouring himself another drink of whiskey. His hands are steady, his mind clear. The violence has brought him back to life, in a way. He feels more like his old self, the man he once was, the killer he had tried to bury. As he drinks, B-Champ, trapped under a body, manages to crawl free. Trembling, he hands Money a rifle, desperate to avoid the same fate as the others. B-Champ tries to engage Money in conversation, asking him about gunfighting, but one cold, intimidating glare from Money is enough to send him scurrying away, terrified. Money remains in the saloon for a moment longer, surveying the scene. As Money stands amidst the wreckage of the saloon, surrounded by the bodies of those foolish enough to stand against him, a faint noise catches his ear. Little Bill, bloodied and broken, is still clinging to life. His breath comes in ragged gasps, and with what little strength he has left, he cocks his pistol, desperate for one last shot. But before he can raise it, Money is there, his boot crushing down on Bill's hand, rendering him powerless. Little Bill's eyes fill with a mix of fear and regret as he looks up at the barrel of Money's rifle pointed squarely at his face. "I don't deserve this," Little Bill mutters, his voice trembling, perhaps trying to appeal to whatever shred of humanity he thinks might be left in Money. Money's response is cold, devoid of mercy or compassion. "Deserves has nothing to do with it," he says, his voice flat, emotionless. "This isn't about justice, and it's not about redemption. It's about the simple, brutal reality of the world they live in." Little Bill, knowing the end is near, gathers the last of his defiance, spitting out his final words. "I'll see you in hell, William Money." The words hang in the air, thick with the weight of all the sins they've both committed. But Money, unfazed, meets his gaze one last time, replying simply, "Yeah." And with that, he pulls the trigger. The blast is deafening in the silence of the room, and Little Bill's body slumps to the ground, lifeless. As the smoke from the gun clears, Money doesn't look back. He strides toward the door, but before he can leave, a faint, agonized moaning fills the air. One of the men he had shot earlier is still alive, barely clinging to life. Without a second thought, Money raises his gun again and fires, putting the man out of his misery with a single shot. His movements are calm, almost methodical, as if this were just another day in the life he thought he had left behind. At the door, Money pauses, turning to face the terrified onlookers who are too scared to move, too scared to breathe. His voice cuts through the room like a blade. "I'm coming out now. Anyone I see, I'll kill." The words are simple but loaded with the threat of violence, a promise he is more than capable of keeping. The room is deathly silent, every eye fixed on him. He doesn't stop there. "And if anyone shoots at me, I'll kill them, their wife, their friends, and I'll burn their damn house down." There's no doubt in anyone's mind that he means every word. No one dares to move. No one dares to challenge him. The legend of William Money, the cold-blooded killer, has come roaring back to life. Slowly, Money steps out into the cold night air, the weight of everything he's done hanging heavily on his shoulders. He walks to his horse, still tethered outside, the snow crunching under his boots. As he mounts, he casts one last look at the town that has seen too much bloodshed. His eyes fall on Ned's body, still displayed like some gruesome trophy, and his voice, steady and deadly, carries on the wind. "You bury Ned right. And if any of you harms one of those women, I'll come back here, and I'll kill every last one of you." The townsfolk don't dare move or speak. They know he means it. With that final warning, Money rides off into the night, the once vibrant, bustling town of Big Whiskey now shrouded in fear and silence. The townspeople stand frozen in place as his figure disappears into the darkness, the legend of William Money growing even larger in their minds. No one will ever forget the night he came to Big Whiskey. And no one will ever cross him again. As the credits roll, we learn that Money, after all the bloodshed, eventually left behind the violence of his past for good. He moved to San Francisco with his children, far away from the killing and the ghosts of Big Whiskey. There, he started a new life, prospering in the dry goods business. But the legend of the man he once was, the fearsome gunfighter, will live on forever in the minds of those who witnessed his return. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe for more like it.